Morning to you, Jonathan.
Good morning.
Okay, you're thrust into the limelight as a 17-year-old on Britain's Got Talent. How old do you think you were when you realised you had that voice?
In 2012, a 17-year-old boy stunned the world on Britain's Got Talent. Jonathan Antoine stepped onto that stage with a voice that seemed almost otherworldly, something so pure and powerful it felt like magic. Yet behind the sudden fame and applause, he carried a secret that he would not share for 28 years. His struggles had started much earlier. At just 4 years old, Jonathan became the target of cruel bullying. Children threw food at him, mocked him, and left him in tears that teachers often discovered when he was hiding alone. Then came a diagnosis that forever altered his life. What Jonathan endured wasn't simply about being overweight or painfully shy, it was tied to something far deeper, a truth that explained why he had always felt so different. And when he finally revealed that truth years later, it broke hearts everywhere. Jonathan Antoine was born on January 13, 1995, in Chigwell, Essex. From the outside, his hometown looked like a quiet and privileged place to grow up, but Jonathan's personal world told a different story. From a very young age, he displayed signs of extraordinary musical talent. By the time he was 6, he had developed perfect pitch, a rare ability that only about 1 in 10,000 people possess. Yet despite this gift, few people seemed to notice or nurture it. Instead, Jonathan spent much of his school life dealing with relentless bullying, so severe that teachers often discovered him sobbing alone. To soothe himself, he would hum long, drawn-out melodies. His mother, Julie, later shared that during the darkest moments, Jonathan would even compose entire songs silently in his head. Although he showed signs of depression as early as 8 years old, his mind was also performing something remarkable. Jonathan could hear an opera piece once and recall every single part. Doctors later explained that he exhibited traits of a rare condition known as musical savant syndrome, something found in fewer than 1 in 1,000 individuals. But alongside this gift came another lifelong struggle, his battle with weight. At just 4 years old, Jonathan began using food as his only source of comfort. By the time he was 5, he was already 40 pounds heavier than the average child his age. At 6, he weighed 95 pounds, more than double the normal weight for boys his size. School became a daily torment. Classmates threw food at him during lunch and bombarded him with cruel names. And the more they teased, the more he turned to food for comfort. By the age of 10, Jonathan weighed 154 pounds. His mother desperately tried to help. She even mortgaged their home twice just to afford therapy, but nothing seemed to make a difference. Eventually, experts diagnosed him with trauma-induced hyperphagia, a condition that affects only about 2% of severely bullied children and leads to extreme, uncontrollable weight gain. Jonathan's life changed unexpectedly at age 10. During a routine choir audition led by a substitute teacher named Mrs. Williams, he tried to fade into the background. But once he opened his mouth to sing, everything shifted. His voice was nothing short of astonishing, strong, rich, and filled with the power of a grown adult tenor. Mrs. Williams would later describe it as sounding like Luciano Pavarotti trapped in a child's body. When the first recording of his voice was analyzed, it revealed that Jonathan could hit frequencies far beyond the ability of most children. Even more incredible, he had a natural vibrato, something that usually takes professional singers decades to master. Within weeks, Jonathan was being given solos written for adults. He didn't even need a microphone, his voice was so strong it reached 95 decibels, powerful enough to fill a hall of 2,000 seats. That discovery was soon hailed as one of the most important moments in British music education. By the age of 15, Jonathan's talent was undeniable. That year, he entered the Stratford and East London Music Festival. He weighed 298 pounds and stood just over 5 feet tall, but none of that mattered once he began to sing. Competing against 47 other singers, many of them professionally trained for years, Jonathan faced tough odds. His strongest rival was 17-year-old Victoria Sterling, who had already performed at the prestigious Royal Opera House. Jonathan chose to sing Nessun Dorma, and the performance drew an enormous crowd, nearly 2,000 people squeezed into a space designed for 1,200. By the end, the audience gave him a standing ovation that lasted more than 4 minutes. One of the judges, Sir David Wilcox, awarded him an astonishing 98 out of 100, the highest score ever in the festival's history. Along with a prize of £2,500, Jonathan also received his first recording offer. But even more important, for the very first time in his life, he experienced what it felt like to be celebrated instead of ridiculed. That same year, Jonathan was accepted into the Royal Academy of Music's junior program, a highly selective opportunity. Out of more than 2,800 applicants, only 23 were chosen, and Jonathan was one of them. His audition had been nearly flawless, despite the fact that he had vomited twice beforehand due to overwhelming nerves. His teacher at the academy described his voice as sounding like that of a professionally trained 25-year-old. The program typically cost over £8,000 per year, but when Jonathan's mother explained their financial struggles, the fee was waived. Weekends quickly filled with intensive training, 6 hours of vocal technique, 4 hours of music theory, and 2 hours of performance coaching. At first, other students kept their distance, judging him by his appearance. But within 3 months, Jonathan shattered expectations when he was cast as the lead in The Magic Flute, becoming the youngest student in the Academy's long history to take on the role. In 2011, Jonathan's high school music teacher, Jenny Ewington, made a decision that would forever alter his future. She paired the shy 17-year-old, still weighing more than 20 stone, with 16-year-old Charlotte Giaconelli. Charlotte was everything Jonathan was not: confident, outgoing, and experienced. She had been performing since she was 8 years old and thrived under the spotlight. Jenny wasn't simply guessing, she knew Charlotte's commanding stage presence could balance Jonathan's incredible but timid voice. Their first duet was The Prayer, performed in front of just 15 classmates. But even in that small setting, Jenny recognized something extraordinary. Jonathan and Charlotte were opposites in nearly every way. He practiced opera for hours but avoided people, while she had starred in over 30 musicals and loved performing. Yet when they sang together, their voices blended with rare perfection. Jonathan's tenor stretched from C3 to C5, while Charlotte's soprano soared from C4 to C6. A music producer who later heard their early recordings described their pairing as something that only comes along once in a generation. But behind the scenes, Jonathan still battled fear and self-doubt. Charlotte often had to push him just to rehearse. There were times when Jonathan had panic attacks and locked himself in the school bathroom, unwilling to face anyone. Charlotte would find him, calm him down, and guide him back to the music room. To help him gain confidence, they began performing locally. Between February and April of 2012, they sang at 23 venues, ranging from churches and retirement homes to weddings and pubs. Their first paid gig came during an Easter service at a church, earning £50 each.